Guess you don't count. That's what my sister said when the seating chart put me outside by the trash cans. The hallway smelled like lilies and bleach. I could hear the DJ inside counting down to the first dance. My mother adjusted her pearls. My father looked away. I tightened my grip on the gift I'd wrapped the night before, smoothed my wine-colored dress, and chose silence. No argument, no tears. I stood up and walked out into the Vermont air. 5 minutes later, the chandeliers went quiet, and a scream cut the room in half. Here's what happened next. The Vermont air was sharp that morning, the kind that smells like pine and money. My sister Lila had chosen the lakeside resort for its European charm, the kind of place where people took photos just to prove they'd been invited. The glass ballroom overlooked the water, strung with orchids and candles, floating in crystal bowls. Every table inside shimmered under the chandeliers. Mine apparently was out by the trash cans. I'd driven up alone 3 hours from Boston, replaying Mom's last text in my head. Please, Ambar, no drama today. It's Lila's day. That was all I ever was to her, an instruction, a warning label. Don't make noise. Don't take space. Don't remind anyone there's another daughter. Growing up, we were the cliché you see in family portraits, the golden child and the quiet one. Lila had ribbons and trophies. I had report cards no one looked at. She'd cry and get rescued. I'd fix things and get ignored. Mom said I was the easy one. Dad said I was independent. Both meant the same thing. Invisible was convenient. The last time I saw them all together was Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I remember the house smelling like burnt pie crust and lemon cleaner. Lila was in Portugal with her new boyfriend, and for once the air felt light. Mom asked me to grab an old photo album from her vanity drawer. Instead, I found her little brown journal, edges soft from years of use. I flipped through it, curious, until I realized every page began the same way: Lila's first day of kindergarten, Lila's favorite meal, Lila's college acceptance. Not a single line about me, not my birthdays, not my name. When I asked why, Mom smiled like it was a silly question. You never needed the attention, honey. You were always fine. That night I learned there are 2 kinds of forgotten: being lost and being erased. I thought about that journal as I walked toward the ballroom, now heels clicking on marble. Through the glass doors, I saw them posing for photos, Mom in champagne silk, Dad straightening his tie, and Lila glowing in white. She looked back, once saw me, and smiled the same way people smile at store clerks they won't remember. The coordinator intercepted me with her clipboard. "You're Ms. Hayes?" she asked. "Yeah." Her polite smile faltered when she found my name. "You're listed for hallway seating." I laughed, waiting for her to correct herself. She didn't. Hallway seating, next to the trash cans. I followed her hand toward the small folding table by the service doors. From there, I could see the entire ballroom, every sparkle, every laugh, but there was a wall between us, literal and otherwise. I set my gift on the table, a small silver-wrapped box I'd spent hours picking out, and stared through the glass. Inside, Lila was raising her glass for a photo, Mom adjusting her veil. Outside, I sat in the cold draft and told myself the same lie I'd told for years. It's fine. You don't need them. But the truth was pressing against my chest, quiet and solid. Maybe I didn't need them. But that didn't mean they had the right to treat me like I never existed. I tried to disappear into the background like always, but the hallway wasn't quiet. Staff came and went through the service door, wheeling bins of melting ice, laughing under their breath. Every time it swung open, I caught flashes of the ballroom chandeliers glittering. Dresses swaying, my mother's hand on Lila's shoulder like a crown of approval. Then the laughter shifted. I looked up and saw Lila walking toward me, bouquet in one hand, veil trailing behind, like smoke. She stopped just short of the doorway. Her reflection doubled in the glass, 2 versions of her, one adored inside, one cruel outside. "Well," she said, tilting her head, "looks like they finally figured out where you belong." I blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" She smiled, that half smile I'd seen since childhood, the one she used before stealing the spotlight. "Guess you don't count." The words landed so softly I almost missed how sharp they were. Guess you don't count. Like it was math. Like I was a miscalculation. For a second I said nothing. My throat went dry, the kind of dryness that comes from swallowing too much pride. Behind her, the photographer was calling Bride, "We need you back in the shot." She didn't move. She wanted me to react to cry, to beg, to prove her point. I didn't. I just looked at her, long enough for her smile to twitch. "You know," I said quietly, "there's always been space for both of us. You're the one who keeps shrinking it." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, please, Ambar. Not everything's about you. This is my day. You could at least pretend to be happy for once." I let out a small laugh, the kind that sounds like air escaping from a crack. "You made sure I couldn't even sit in the same room. What exactly am I celebrating?" For a moment, the mask slipped. I saw a flicker of something fear, maybe. Then she straightened, lifting her chin. "You always twist things. Maybe Mom was right. You make everything difficult, Mom." The name hit harder than I wanted it to. I pictured that brown notebook again, every page filled with Lila's life and none of mine. "I'm not difficult," I said. "You just never like that I see things the way they are." She rolled her eyes. "You sound just like Dad, pathetic and bitter. Face it, Ambar, nobody needs your approval. Not here, not ever." She turned on her heel, leaving a trail of perfume and disdain. I watched her go, her white gown brushing the floor, and felt the familiar burn behind my eyes. But this time, it didn't hurt the same way. It burned cleaner. When the door closed behind her, I picked up the small silver box from the table, the gift I'd chosen the night before, wrapped in quiet patience. I traced the ribbon once, then slipped it into my bag. If they didn't want me inside, fine, but I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Not this time. For a while, I just sat there, fingers pressed against the smooth edge of the box, listening to the muffled beat of music leaking through the ballroom doors. It was supposed to be their first dance. A perfect picture. I imagined Mom wiping tears, Dad clapping awkwardly, Lila basking in the applause. The same scene I'd watched my whole life from the edges. But edges cut. I stood up slowly. My reflection caught in the glass panel, still composed, maybe even graceful if you didn't look too closely. Inside the bag, the silver gift felt heavier than it should. I had wrapped it carefully the night before, tying the ribbon tighter than necessary. It wasn't just a present. It was proof, something that could shatter the image Lila built out of lies. 3 weeks earlier, I'd run into one of her old co-workers in Boston. A harmless lunch turned into a confession. Lila had been bragging for months about marrying Rich, about how easy it was to make Noah trust her. "He's sweet," she'd said, "but naive. A few fake tears and I get the house, the money, the last name." She'd laughed. My coffee went cold. I hadn't planned to use that information. Until today. Before leaving the hallway, I walked back to the reception table near the ballroom entrance. The wedding planner was distracted fussing over centerpieces. I slid the small silver box among the other gifts right on top of the pile labeled, "To Lila and Noah." My handwriting was neat, deliberate. Inside, on top of a crystal frame, was a folded note and a printout of the messages her coworker had shown me, screenshots and receipts. Not a threat. Just the truth. I stepped back, checked my reflection one last time, and straightened my dress. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady calm in a way that felt almost foreign. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. The Vermont evening hit me with a rush of cold air. The lake shimmered under the lights, a mirror I didn't need anymore. I could hear the faint echo of clapping behind me, the crowd cheering for a dance I no longer cared to watch. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I reached the parking lot, the crunch of gravel under my heels like punctuation. No dramatic goodbye, no speech, just the quiet closure of a car door. As I started the engine, I looked back once at the glowing windows, the silhouettes moving behind glass, and whispered to myself, "Let the truth find its way." Inside the ballroom, laughter still floated above the music. A saxophonist hit a soft note. Glasses clinked, the crowd pressed closer around the couple on the dance floor. Lila glowed in that heavy white gown, the picture of perfection she'd rehearsed for months. Noah spun her once, twice the camera flashes painting everything gold. From outside through the tall windows, the scene looked like a snow globe, sealed, flawless, unreal. Then the silver box was opened. It happened near the gift table. A cousin had gathered the presents, sorting bows and ribbons for photos. Someone said, Let's have them open one a spur-of-the-moment show for the guests. Lila turned laughing and tugged the ribbon free. The paper fell away, the lid lifted, and inside lay the crystal frame and beneath it the folded note. Her hand hesitated. "What's this?" Bussa leaned over. The note slid loose and landed face up on the table. His eyes caught the screenshots before she could snatch them. He frowned, scanning the text messages printed in pale blue bubbles. A sentence stuck out. "He's so easy to handle. Cry a little and he buys anything I want." The music didn't stop right away. It just thinned. The violinist stumbled, missing a beat. Lila's fingers shook. This isn't someone's trying to... Noah didn't answer. He just kept reading page after page. Each line was worse than the last. Jokes about getting him to sign the prenup first, moving Mom and Dad into the guest house once he's settled. The same smirk she'd given me hours ago, now frozen on her face, brittle and wrong. "Who sent this?" she hissed. Her mother-in-law, Victoria, had been watching from across the room. When she heard the name Ambar Hayes whispered by one of the bridesmaids, her expression hardened. She crossed the floor with the slow certainty of someone used to authority. "I think you should read the rest before you blame anyone," she said. "These came to me this morning, forwarded from a stylist you hired. Apparently they were in the wrong thread." Lila's face drained of color. "That's not possible." Noah's voice was low. "It's real, Lila. The dates match." He turned the final page. A photo of her text, "The house will be mine by Christmas." A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Phones came out. The photographer froze mid-shot. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Lila lunged for the papers. "You can't show people that Victoria stepped between them. You showed it yourself, sweetheart." That was when the screaming started, not loud at first, more like air leaving a body too fast. Lila stumbled back, the train of her gown catching under her heel. "No, you don't understand. He's lying. My sister, she did this." Noah's jaw tightened. "Ambar didn't write those messages. She planted them. She's jealous. She's always..." "Stop." The single word cracked through the room like a whip. "You did this. You humiliated her today, and you thought no one would ever see who you really are." Every face had turned toward them now. The DJ lowered the volume. A child's voice asked Mom what's happening. Lila's perfect day was dissolving and she couldn't hold it together anymore. She spun toward her parents. "Do something." My mother Maggie stood pale and stiff near the head table, her champagne glass trembling. My father looked at the floor, lips pressed tight. For once, neither defended her. "You knew," Noah said quietly, his voice shaking now. "You knew exactly what you were doing." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded document, and set it on the table. "This is an annulment petition. I already signed it." Lila stared at the paper like it was a live wire. Noah, you can't humiliate me like this." "I'm not humiliating you," he said. "You did that yourself." Someone turned off the music entirely. The room fell into a silence so deep it buzzed in people's ears. Then came the sound the guests would remember, crystal shattering as the frame hit the floor. Her voice cracked. "She's behind this, Ambar's behind all of it." Victoria exhaled slowly. "Funny. The only thing your sister did was tell the truth." Outside, I'd stopped by the car engine, idling. The glow from the ballroom windows flickered across the lake. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard the scream. It came sharp and high, echoing across the water, followed by the dull thud of a chair tipping. The sound I'd waited my whole life to hear, not out of cruelty, but closure. Inside, Lila's mascara streaked down her cheeks. "You'll regret this," she shouted, voice breaking. Noah turned away, shoulders heavy. "No, Lila, you will." He walked off the dance floor, followed by Victoria, the crowd parting around them like a tide. Mom reached for Lila's arm. "Sweetheart, maybe we should step outside." "Don't touch me," she cried, pulling free. "You all wanted this. You never loved me enough." Her voice dissolved into sobs. Dad spoke quietly for the first time that night. "You should apologize to your sister." The word stunned everyone, even Mom, but Lila only laughed a sound so brittle it didn't reach her eyes. Apologize to her? She's not even family. Dad shook his head slowly. "That's where you're wrong." He left it at that, turning away, shoulders sagging as he followed the crowd toward the exit. By the time the lights dimmed and the staff began sweeping broken glass from the floor, Lila sat alone under the chandelier. Her dress, once dazzling, now looked heavy wrinkled. The bouquet had fallen beside her chair. The same hands that had pushed me away now clutched air, desperate for something to hold. She never saw me. I was already gone. Through the fogged car window, I watched as guests hurried out into the parking lot, whispers trailing behind them. "It's all over social media already. Did you see his face? That poor girl. No, the other one, the sister." I didn't feel triumph, just quiet. I rested my hand on the steering wheel and thought about the hallway, the smell of lilies and bleach, the folding chair that squeaked when I sat. How it all started with a seat by the trash cans. How it ended with the truth laid bare in front of everyone who had ever looked through me. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered, "Now they see you." The scream faded, swallowed by the night. The lake went still, again glassy and calm. I turned the key, headlights washing over gravel, and drove away from the sound of my sister's perfect world collapsing behind me. By the time I reached Boston, the sky was beginning to gray. The highway signs blurred past the hum of the tires, steady and low like white noise after years of shouting I'd learned to ignore. My phone buzzed nonstop in the cup holder, 16 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Dad, 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't check any of them. The quiet was worth more than explanations. When I stepped into my apartment, it smelled faintly of coffee and rain. The city outside was waking up, headlights flashing across my window. I hung my dress on the back of a chair and stared at it, the deep wine color still flawless, untouched by the night. It looked like armor I hadn't known I was wearing. A new message appeared. "Please answer, Ambar." We didn't know. That was Mom. She always said that when things finally went wrong, we didn't know. But she had known all along. Every time she'd told me to stay quiet, every time she'd laughed at Lila's jokes, every time she'd said, "You're fine." I put the phone face down on the counter and opened my laptop instead. A map of Maine blinked back at me, dotted with tiny coastal towns. I picked one somewhere I'd never been and clicked book. A week by the water sounded like peace. Before leaving, I stepped out onto the balcony. The city air smelled cleaner than it had in years. Across the river, the morning sun cut the skyline into gold and shadow. They could keep their apologies, their explanations, their versions of the truth. I had mine now. For the first time in my life, silence didn't mean being unseen. It meant being free. At my sister's wedding, I was seated by the trash cans. This morning, I'm sitting by the river. Same silence, different meaning. Back then, it was humiliation. Now it's peace. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't a scream. It's the sound of your own footsteps leaving the room. They thought I'd always stay, waiting for their approval. But I don't wait anymore. I don't beg for space at someone else's table. I build my own. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people who were supposed to love you, know this: walking away isn't weakness. It's the beginning of freedom. Tell me, have you ever had to walk away from your own family? Share your story below and stay for the next one. My mother didn't even blink when she said it across the dinner table. "You're not half the woman your sister is." The words hit so hard the room actually tilted. I pushed my chair back, feeling every year I'd kept quiet tighten in my chest, and said, "Then she can start paying your rent." Forks froze. My father went pale. "Rent? What rent?" he whispered, like the truth might swallow him whole. But that moment, the shock, the silence, the fear in his eyes was nothing compared to what came after, because the real secret hadn't been revealed yet. My name is Nora Ellis, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in a family that never stops talking about my sister. People often assume I'm shy, but that isn't quite true. I just learned early that in my parents' house, silence keeps the peace, and peace, no matter how fragile, was something I tried to protect. On paper, my life looks steady. I'm a financial manager at a logistics company near the Portland Harbor. I work with numbers, deadlines, and systems that make sense. There's a calmness in spreadsheets that real life has never offered me. My days follow predictable rhythms, the echo of forklifts at the docks, the hum of the office, the soft click of my keyboard. I go home to a small apartment with warm lamps and a view of the river. Some nights I cook pasta, tie my hair up, and take comfort in small, orderly things. But the steadiness ends every Friday. That's when I drive to my parents' two-story house in the suburbs, a place wrapped in manicured hedges and the illusion of a perfect family. Inside, perfection cracks fast. The moment I step through the door, I feel 16 again, the second daughter, the supporting role in Vivian's highlight reel. My sister has always been the star. Tall, confident, the kind of person who fills a room and expects it to stay filled. She debated her way to trophies in high school, earned a law scholarship, and walked into a career everyone applauded before she even proved herself. And quiet steady, Nora watched her take the spotlight like it was her birthright. My parents adore her. They always have. At every family gathering, every holiday, every dinner, they lift her accomplishments like offerings. New cases she won, promotions she got, the house she bought, her plans, her vacations, her potential. And then there's me. Nora, who pays her own tuition at 17. Nora, who works 2 jobs in college. Nora, who never asks for help. I learned not to. It wasn't that my parents disliked me, they just preferred the louder story. Still, I kept showing up every Friday because they insisted. My dad always said, "This family has a seat for you. Don't leave it empty," half joking, half serious. My mom called if I was even 5 minutes late. Family first, she'd remind me, though it often felt like Vivian first was closer to the truth. The dinners were predictable. My mother plated the same roast chicken. My father asked the same questions. Vivian shared the same wins. And I pushed food around my plate, pretending the quiet I carried didn't weigh something fierce. But the Friday before everything imploded felt different. My mother kept giving me these sharp, assessing glances. Vivian was in an unusually triumphant mood, like she knew something I didn't. Even my father's smile looked stretched too thin. I sensed it then, a storm building beneath the polite clatter of dishes. I just didn't know it would hit me first. That Friday dinner began like all the others, but there was a weight in the air I couldn't name. My mother hovered near the stove longer than usual, stirring the same pot, twice her jaw tight. Vivian scrolled through her phone with a grin so smug it felt rehearsed. And my father kept clearing his throat the way he does when he's preparing to make an announcement. I'd lived enough Fridays to know when something was coming, but I tried to shake it off. I set the table, lined up the silverware, pretended not to notice the tension pooling under every breath. When we finally sat down, the conversation, like always, turned to Vivian. "She's presenting at a conference next week," my mom said proudly. They asked her, "Isn't that something?" "She's always been exceptional," my dad added, giving her a smile that belonged in a campaign poster. Vivian shrugged with fake modesty. "Well, they know talent when they see it." I chewed slowly, swallowing a mix of chicken and resentment. I'd spent the entire day back at work fixing a financial mess left by someone else, but that never made it to the family dinner table. My achievements lived quietly in the corners of my parents' house, tucked between bills and forgotten grocery lists. I tried to change the subject. "I led a big project at work this week." My director said, but my mother waved her hand. "You're doing fine, Nora. But Vivian's work impacts hundreds of people. It's different." That sting, small, sharp, intentional, landed exactly where she wanted it to. I looked down at my plate, reminding myself to keep breathing. It was just another Friday, I told myself. Another night of swallowing what I wished I could say. But then my father leaned back, exhaling with a dramatic sigh. "Speaking of homes," he began, "Vivian helped us sort through some mortgage paperwork last month. She's been such a blessing." A chill crawled up my spine. Mortgage paperwork? Blessing. Vivian's grin widened. It wasn't a big deal. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. 3 years of payments pulsed behind my ribs. Payments I'd made quietly, without applause, without acknowledgement, because they told me they didn't want anyone worrying. I had sacrificed vacations, graduate classes, even the down payment for my own apartment. And now they were rewriting the story. A warmth started building in my chest, slow at first, then rising like a tide I could no longer hold back. My mother must have sensed it because she gave me that look, the patronizing tilt of her head that always meant I should stay quiet. Then she said the sentence that split something open inside me. "You're not half the woman your sister is." The room didn't just go silent, it snapped. I felt myself sit up straighter. I felt the scrape of the chair legs on the hardwood floor. I felt every unspoken word I had ever swallowed gather at the back of my throat, like a storm clawing to break free. And for the first time in my life, at that table, I didn't push the feeling down. I let it rise. The words left my mother's mouth with such casual certainty that for a moment, I wondered if she even heard herself. "You're not half the woman your sister is." She said it like stating the weather, like it was a fact I should have accepted long ago. Something steadied inside me. I pushed my chair back slowly, the sound of wood scraping across the floor, cutting the air clean in half. Vivian's smile faltered. My father looked up, startled, as if he'd forgotten I was even sitting there. I met my mother's eyes, my voice calmer than I felt. "Then she can start paying your rent." Silence slammed into the room. My father blinked. "Rent what rent?" His voice cracked, almost pleading. I didn't flinch. "The mortgage payments." For 3 years, 3 pairs of eyes widened at once, shock denial and something close to fear flickering across their faces. I felt a strange lightness, like I had finally stopped carrying a weight no one else even knew existed. My mother recovered first. "Nora, don't be dramatic. We never asked you." "You did?" I cut in my voice, steady. "Every month. Just this once. We'll handle next month. Don't let the bank send a notice. I have the payments, I have the bills, I have everything." My father's face drained of color. "You shouldn't bring that up now, it's not appropriate." There it was, the dismissal, the minimization, the attempt to shove the truth back into the shadows where they preferred me to live. I stood fully, hands on the back of my chair. What's inappropriate is pretending Vivian saved a home I paid to keep standing. Vivian finally spoke, her voice thin. "Nora, maybe you misheard. Maybe Mom didn't mean," but I wasn't listening anymore. I watched them scramble to reframe the story, to mold it into something comfortable for them. And for the first time, I didn't shrink to fit that version. Something inside me clicked, sharp, clear, irreversible. Without another word, I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my coat, and stepped outside into the cold Portland air. My breath shook, but not from regret. It was the shock of hearing myself stand up after years of sitting down. That night back in my apartment, I opened my laptop, scrolled to the automatic monthly payment, and clicked cancel. A small box appeared. "Are you sure?" This time I was. Canceling the payments should have felt like closure, but instead it cracked something open. For the first time in 3 years, my bank account didn't drain on the 15th. The silence from my parents was loud enough to rattle the walls. I started running along the river in the mornings. At first, it was just to quiet the shaking in my hands, but soon the rhythm of my feet on the pavement became something like freedom. I joined a Thursday cooking class at the community center. I learned how to make homemade pasta and how to laugh with strangers who didn't know a thing about my family. I even let some friends drag me on weekend hikes around Mount Hood, where the air felt cleaner, like it hadn't been breathed by expectations yet. With distance, I saw everything more clearly. Just this month, every "don't tell anyone." Every time they'd praised Vivian while I paid the bills in silence. And then came the photo. It arrived on a Sunday morning from Mrs. Jensen, my parents' elderly neighbor who had a habit of noticing everything. She texted me a picture of my childhood home with a banner stretched across the porch. "Congratulations, Vivian, for preserving the family home." My entire body went still. Preserving Vivian. My throat tightened as I stared at the banner, my hands numb. Every late-night transfer, every sacrifice, every time I'd told myself family comes first, all of it rewritten like I'd never been there at all. I didn't cry. Not this time. I felt something else, something sharper, steadier. I walked to the dining table, pulled out the folder where I kept every payment and bill I'd printed over the last 3 years, and began to organize them, date by date, month by month. It looked less like a stack of papers and more like a quiet autobiography of sacrifice. That's when Sarah called. "Nora, I think you should know," she whispered. "Your parents are planning a family appreciation dinner next month. In Seattle. They asked me to make the slideshow." I braced myself. "Let me guess. It's about Vivian. It's worse than that." I could hear the discomfort in her voice. They want to highlight her as the reason the house was saved. They gave me captions. They're calling her the anchor of the family. Anchor, savior, hero. All words I had earned but never received. "Send me the file," I said. She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I'm very sure." When the slideshow arrived, I opened it and felt a hollow laugh escape me. Photos of Vivian standing proudly in front of the house, my parents hugging her on the porch, captions like, "Thank you, Vivian, for keeping our family home safe." I created a copy of the file and added what they had erased. After their final slide, I inserted a timeline of the payments, bar charts of monthly support, screenshots of messages from my mother blurred for privacy, but clear in meaning. And the last slide, a photo of the house with the words, "The truth deserves a place too." I saved the file to my laptop, to the cloud, and onto a USB drive I kept in my bag like a heartbeat. Weeks passed. I moved into my new apartment in Seattle, bright, quiet, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the skyline. I bought a light gray sofa, a small oak table, and one tall bookshelf. For the first time in my life, I walked into a home that belonged entirely to me. And then the invitation arrived. A message from my mother, family appreciation dinner. Dress nicely. No explanation, no acknowledgement, no apology. But when the day came, I didn't go to impress them. I went to finish something. The restaurant in downtown Seattle glowed with soft amber lights. Through the glass, I saw familiar silhouettes, my parents' Vivian, in an emerald dress, relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone dressed like they were attending a ceremony. And in a way, they were. I waited by the doorway, unseen, as my father took the microphone. "We are here," he began proudly, to honor our daughter Vivian, the one who stepped up during difficult times, who helped us keep the home that has been in our family for decades. Applause, smiles, cameras flashing. The slideshow started. Vivian on the porch, Vivian holding papers, Vivian smiling next to my mother, caption after caption painting a story that wasn't true. Then the screen flickered. A bar chart appeared. Then another. Then the dates, the payments. 3 years of financial support mine spread across the screen in unforgiving clarity. The room went silent. My parents froze. Vivian's mouth fell open. I stepped forward into the light. "If the truth makes anyone uncomfortable tonight," I said calmly, "that's not my problem." Every head in the room turned. My father looked at me like I was a ghost he never expected to see. My mother's face crumpled, not in shame, but in fear of being exposed. Vivian's eyes filled not with sorrow, but with dread. I walked toward the screen. For 3 years, I paid the mortgage. Not 1 month, every month. Quietly. Consistently. While you, I looked at my parents, rewrote the story to make it easier for everyone to applaud. My father tried to speak. "Nora, take this outside. Why I asked. You wanted everyone here to know what Vivian did. Why shouldn't they know what I did?" Whispers spread like wildfire. I knew something was off. She was always working late. 3 years. She paid all that. Vivian stood trembling. "I didn't ask them to do this. I thought..." "You thought nothing?" I said, not cruelly but plainly. "You enjoyed being the hero in a story that was never yours." My mother finally found her voice. "Nora, we didn't want to embarrass you." I laughed softly. Embarrass me by telling the truth. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket, but the truth on the screen was enough. I had no desire to attack them further. The point wasn't to win. It was to be seen. For the record, I said, "I don't want the house. I don't want credit. I just won't let you erase me." The room stayed silent long after I stepped away from the screen. My father reached out a hand. "Nora, wait." But I didn't wait. I turned and walked toward the door, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside, the cool Seattle night wrapped around me. I stood on the steps, breathing in the sharp air, and realized something. This wasn't revenge. It was release. Inside, they could argue, cry, deny. It didn't matter. The truth had been spoken, and I had finally stepped out of the shadow they kept me in. And once you step into your own light, you don't go back. 2 days after the dinner, I was watering a small plant on my balcony when someone knocked. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing close together, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. My mother's eyes were swollen, my father's shoulders tense, as if the cold Seattle air had carved new lines into both of them. I opened the door without a word. They stepped inside, slowly scanning my apartment like they were entering a life they'd never imagined for me. Sunlight spilled across the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the edges of my bookshelf, the new dining table, the quiet I had built on my own. My mother spoke first. "Nora, we're sorry." Her voice cracked. "We were wrong. We shouldn't have let the story become something it wasn't. We shouldn't have asked you to carry so much alone," my father added. "We talked. We want your name on the house. You earned it." I let the words settle, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "I don't need it," I said. "I have a home now, my own." What I needed was respect and honesty, not a deed. They fell silent. My mother's hands shook. My father looked at the floor like the truth had finally dragged him somewhere unfamiliar. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly, "but I'm done disappearing. If we rebuild anything, it has to start from that." Something in the room shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an opening. A place where we could breathe without old stories crushing us. When they left, the apartment felt even brighter. I walked to the balcony, looking out over the skyline, realizing I had crossed a line there was no returning from. And for the first time, the future felt entirely mine. I stood on my balcony long after the door closed behind my parents, watching the Seattle lights blink against the dark. For years, I thought keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. But the truth is, silence doesn't protect you. It erases you. Choosing myself didn't break my family. It finally broke the story that kept me small. And maybe that's the real beginning. If you've ever carried a burden in silence or been written out of your own story, tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this chapter resonated with you, hit subscribe. More stories are coming, stories about finding your voice, standing your ground, and rewriting what family means.